star. I'm not a fantasy. I am not that perfect face you see in the magazine. But I am real, and I am whole. Love me for who I am, who I am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me here in the Locher Room. I'm Alan Locher. Actress, singer, and my friend Melanie Smith is here today to tell us about her incredible new jazz album, The Broken and the Breaker, which is out tomorrow on iTunes, Amazon, and Melanie's website. Melanie wrote the original songs with some of the music industry's most talented and renowned songwriters. Grammy-winning musicians Alex Smith, Daniel Foose, Brian Newman, and Steve Kortyka, known for working with Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett on their albums Cheek to Cheek and Love for Sale. I got together with Melanie back in June and was treated to an early listening of this incredible album, and I can't wait for you all to hear it. Please help me welcome back to the Locher Room, Melanie Smith. Hello, my dear.
Hi, honey.
Nice to see you. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you. It's so crazy because a year ago I was here for the book.
Yeah.
You know, and Alan, I have to say thank you. You're just like, you have the archetype of the best friend. You know, you are always supporting and giving love to people and their projects and who they are today and bringing this community back together. And you're a cog in a very important wheel. Thank you.
Well,
for that.
you have to support your friends. I mean, art, you know, is to be shared, and, you know, you work hard at it. I mean, here you are on the eve, you know, like you said, last July, you were here for the book. And now tomorrow it's out for the world. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I'll tell you, I was really nervous when I released Smile, you know, because I took such a classic song and my producer and I wrote a classic jazz verse to open it, which I always thought would be wonderful for that song to have a real jazz verse to it. And, you know, like putting that out there and putting the version that Tipan, Siren Tip, my producer, who is really a brilliant jazz artist as well. Just the vision and the true artistry. And remember, like, this record was live in the studio with these musicians. Like there was some overdubbing, but very little overdubbing. The main musicians and myself were in the recording studio together. Boom, 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 boom. Right. And you'll see all that if you're interested. Monday or Tuesday, I think the behind the scenes video gets released.
Okay.
But when I first released Smile, I was like, this is the world is such a little time bomb now. You sort of just never know.
Right. If you had done this back when you were on As the World Turns, you wouldn't have heard a reaction until you got something in the mail.
or didn't, right?
Or didn't. Yeah.
Or
yeah.
So when Smile came out, I first of all was shocked at the viewership of the video. I thought like 5 people would watch it. I think we're close to like 30,000, which has been really amazing. And then when Love Me released Monday or last Friday, I can't remember which day it was, the feedback on that song and the DMs I'm getting, like, this message is so important, which I believe about the song. And it's a funny story behind the song. But but at first I'm thinking to myself, oh, what if everybody goes like it? Which is possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, you really have no idea, but it is beautiful. Where did your love of music first begin, and have you always been in love with jazz?
Always. Like, my love of music began really young. Remember, there's 6 kids in my family, and the age range, my oldest sister was 20 years older than me. My parents were 45 years older than me. So I grew up, like, I was obsessed when I was like little with Herb Alpert. I mean, like, I was listening to Ella Fitzgerald. I was dancing to Satin Doll when I was like, it was my mother's favorite song. Jack the Knife, my dad's favorite song. And Mac the Knife, sorry, Jack the Knife. And so, you know, that was, and then of course I learned the F word from Joni Mitchell. When your metals, your strangers, it'll leave you on the empty side, right? I think that's from Court and Spark. And I went into the kitchen and I'm like, Mom, what does the word mean? And she, of course, yelled my brother's name, Simon, get out here with your records, you know. So I listened. I remember, like, when I was little, I would pull my mom and make her put her ear to the speaker so she could hear a guitar part. And I never played, but I always heard full compositions in my head. So I would go into the, like, when you listen to the songs, I wrote lyric and melody. My co-writers did chord structure. But my producer, Tip, did all of the arranging. Steve Korska, I think, did some of it as well. But Tip did almost all the arrangement on it, which was incredible. Like, just for her to take some of that jazzy pop style of mine and make it more jazz was just amazing to hear the songs become what I had envisioned.
When did you first start singing?
I never knew I could sing. I
That's
never thought about, because God forbid you sang in my household, and my mother was a singer, but God forbid you sang in my household. And my sister would be like, "Ah, shut up. You're so awful." So you just didn't, right? Anyway, I was on World Turns, and a producer with BMI, he worked at that time, I forget which record company he was working with, but he also had some position at BMI. And he reached out to me and he said, "Do you sing?" And I said, "No." He said, "We like your image on As World Turns." And I said, "No, I don't sing." And he said, "Do you write?" I said, "I write poems." So they came into the city and we met, and he said, "Why don't we, try to put some of these things to music," which we did. And then we were going into the recording studio to put some songs together, and they were working on a song, "Here I Am," Burt Bacharach song.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed somebody to do a vocal in the in the breakdown and the bridge, so that they could do a wraparound solo with the sax. So they said, "Mel, will you sing that?" And I sang that. And there was a engineer there that was working with, I believe it was Luther Vandross. And he said, "Who is that? She sounds like Karen Carpenter," which, no way. Like, to me, Karen Carpenter was the greatest singer of all time. So, like, that was no. And he said, "Let's demo this." And we demoed it, and that got sent out to LA. And then a producer flew from LA, and then they had me come out and start working with great songwriters. I started working with Michael Kalina, who's, I think, probably a 9-time Grammy winner now. And then went out to LA. I started working with Greg Prestopino. He wrote "Nobody's Gonna Break My Stride," right?
Mm-hmm.
So Some Emotion for Celine. Like, he wrote so many for Aaron Neville and Bette Midler. And so wrote a lot with him, had the opportunity to, never finish, but met up with Jimmy Webb to write some songs together, David Gates. And then it just kind of snowballed. And then what happened then, I had about 7 record companies interested. And I didn't sign with any of them at that point. They wanted me to, like, go heavy pop, etc. And then they had approached me to, Clint Black wanted to do one of my songs. And I was like, "No, I'm going to make that a hit." Which, by the way, I should have given it to Clint Black, because you're in your 20s. And then just a little while after that, I got a small production deal with someone at Sony World. And it went from
it's been percolating, but you sort of put it on the back burner.
Yeah, because as I started working a little bit with Jay Landers and with Jay Cohen and Cooper, I'm sorry. And just as everything started to get really moving, I left the industry to raise my son. I left everything. So I wasn't going to sing. I just wanted to raise my son. So it just went away. And then before COVID, I started working on a one-woman show. Then COVID hit and it stopped that. And then I was taking classes at the Jazz Academy where I met Sear and Tip, my producer.
And what does a jazz class entail? Is it a singing, writing?
It's singing, it's writing, it's chord structure, it's understanding how to scat, which is fun. I've not yet mastered it. I was going to try it on the record, and Sarah was like, why don't we wait on that? why don't we wait on that? So I'm sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. But all of that, and like being able to, jazz, what makes jazz so special is every time you sing, it changes its own life, right? It's understanding the chord structure enough and the chord development enough, and the chord changes enough so that you can be another instrument in the song, right? So it has a different chord structure as well, but yeah,
how instrumental was that class in helping get this finished product together?
Well, it helped me understand that there actually was a substantial difference in the way you work with jazz. But it also, listen, it scared the badoobies out of me half the time that I was in class because these people were really good. Like they'd be like, wait a minute. And I'm like, Bob's your uncle. I have no idea what you're doing, but I would throw myself out there. It was very improvisational. I would throw myself out there, and it tensed me up sometimes. Like when I would see the number coming to me, I'd be like, whoa. But it gave me courage. It let me play a whole different way than I did in the recording studios that I had worked prior or ever worked on music before. So it was helpful. Yeah. Waking me up. And then, of course, Sear and Tip was like, why are you not making a record? And why are you not making a record with your songs? And she loved.
When did you have, from the time you were meeting with the folks when you were on World Turns, were you writing at that point back then?
It's funny. I was learning to write. Like I was a good poet. I had poems published, but I was learning what it meant to write a song because it's real. It's not just, there's a sophisticated way of writing a song. And then there's like, songs you hear, you go, okay, that person doesn't really know how to write a song, but they did put some words to music. So I learned all about, structure and, what works and rhyming and imperfect rhyming and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And you've written 7 original for this album. When would you say the first one how far back? The first one?
On this record, what's on this record?
Yeah.
Some of those were written in the early 2000s, late 90s. One of them was written in the late 90s, but I rewrote the lyrics for the album. So, and then the Broken and the Breaker was written as we were doing the album.
Interesting. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the title. Why was that the title?
Because, I always find it interesting, particularly as a coach, right? Everybody always comes to you with like the brokenness, and we're all broke. I mean, if anybody here says their heart wasn't broken, I'm like, I think there's a liar in the room. But what nobody ever talks about is what they've broken, that they're a breaker of things, right? And it's to acknowledge the fact that we're all broken and we all break things and we can all recover and find the beauty afterwards. And so each song like the song Love Me for Who I Am is very much the place you get to. You know, I'm not
After being broken, of course.
after being
Right.
through it all.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm whole. I'm real. Love me for that, right? And I know you're looking for something out there, particularly in this world today. The swipe, the filters, the da 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 da, you know.
The swipe. Yes.
Right?
But
The
you're
swipe
right.
filter, right? Like, by the way, that doesn't exist. You'll see when you're in the room with them, right? So that whole culture
Yeah,
of,
correct. Right. There's no swiping.
right?
Right.
They're
There's
like, they don't even look.
there's no
My
filter.
girlfriend Cindy Crawford used to go, even Cindy Crawford doesn't look like Cindy Crawford in the morning, right? Well, she does, by the way. I hate to tell you. It's disheartening, but true. So, you know, this illusion
Yeah.
that we build our hopes and dreams on destroy us from finding the things we really dream about. So that's really what that song is about. And I told the story in the in my post on Instagram the one day about, I had gone years ago when I was on World Turns. I was at a hockey game. I was dating a hockey player at the time. And the Nets asked to meet me. And I said, sure, because I was in the arena already. And they all kind of like came out and they lined up, and I stood up and they were like, oh, I thought you were 5'9". I thought you had blue eyes. I was like, all right, guys, you got to love me for who I am, right? And that kind of stuck in my head. And then as I was writing the song, it like just downloaded, and the melody and everything downloaded. And after I wrote it, about 3 months after that, I was in an event and there was a psychic there, and I sat down, what the heck? And he said to me, are you a songwriter, singer? I said, yeah, I am. And he said, did you write a song, Love Me for Who I Am? And I went, yeah. And he said, that song must be recorded and released. It will come out when people need to hear it. Wow. And that was several years ago. So that song is a culmination, but also the song after it on the album, it's called Again.
Well, I wanted to ask, because you describe this as a musical storybook.
Yeah.
So tell everybody how you describe it.
So I talk about it as a musical storybook because these are stories in musical form from my life. Again, I went through, as you know, and you read in the book. I feel like I need a clothing line and a jewelry line here.
You never know.
Supplements and some skincare, just like my own QVC. You know, I went through a lot of loss. And when you go through the kind of loss that I went through, like a boom, 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 to find your tethering, to find your port in that storm, you have to find a higher level messaging. And, you know, in the song Again, in the chorus, it says, I've seen the night as it turns to day, and when all was lost, I found my way. When a heart gets broken, it will mend, so I know love will come again. And the sentiment of, I think, the whole album is, don't lose heart. And you know, the song Changing is about a woman who goes through a loss and discovers infidelity and has to recover from that things are changing. And, you know, let me change my mind. If you've changed already, let me change my mind. Right. And then Twice, which is, I love that song. You know, you're the one mistake I could make twice. Right. Yeah. But that is really about a love affair. I kind of combined a love affair with my love affair with Paris and sort of put them together metaphorically. So each one is a storybook. And then by the end of the album, you know, this song Smile I did as a tribute to my son. You know, I won't be here one day. And I want him to remember that my philosophy in life was not to hide your emotions, right? Not to bypass them, or as I talk about in the book, spiritually bypass or intellectually bypass things, but stay hopeful, keep dreaming, keep the desire to turn what is chaos in the world into something beautiful that we can touch and feel and hear, and love again. Keep the courage up. And one of the things I always say to my son is, I carry your heart in my heart, which is from an E. Cummings poem. And so that's in the outro of Smile. And then when you go to A Case of You, the Joni Mitchell song, which is one of my favorite Joni Mitchell songs, I think that is the story of when you love so deeply and someone is in your blood. You're in my blood. You're my holy wine. You taste so bitter and you taste so sweet. I could drink a case of you and still be on my feet, right? That's all about that maddening love that probably isn't the healthiest love. You know, the ones where you're like, oh my God, you like Chinese food. I like Chinese food. We're the same and we're going to spend our lives together. You know, it's that kind of thing, and typically doesn't work out. And then you move to Stay Kissed, which is very much about passion. And then the song Shorelines is a spiritual song. It's about meditation and about the divine essence. You know, I can see shorelines. Finally, I can hear a sound. It's like a new sensation. I'm a new creation after feeling so low. So that's about the big finish of the album is always look for the beauty of the shoreline. You'll always be able to come back to shore no matter what. So that's it.
Was the a song that was the hardest for you?
To produce or to write?
Both.
So writing for me, it's a bit of a download, you know, and I don't think that's untrue for most songwriters or maybe even writers, because the book downloaded too. But I like to say it this way, like when you listen to Billy Joel's first album, it's impeccable. His albums after are great, but there's fewer like nails on the head because he had time and a life to do those songs. When you move to the next album and you're under pressure to create songs, it gets harder then, Ellen. But when you have the freedom to choose, I mean, I have dozens of other songs, but choosing the songs, that was hard. Choosing the songs was hard. And a lot of that came down to which songs really were workable in the jazz genre best, and which fits into the story of the broken and the breaker and the recovery of life, love, and love after loss, right? So the production was interesting because you want, as an artist, to trust your producer implicitly, which I trusted and still trust Sarah Tip implicitly. We had a little bit of a different vision because she is a firm believer that tempos need to differ on an LP. I was of the, well, shouldn't it all be like this love story-y vibe? And so I handed it off to her and said, you make the decisions as far as what we do with tempo. Broken in the Breaker, in the studio, she upped the tempo, like while I was in the vocal booth. And this is live, so I can't go, no, right? All the musicians are on board. And so I just had to like pick it up. And so there was a lot of production. There's a lot of production value in this record. You know, this wasn't like years in the making. This was, we recorded the musicians. My main musicians recorded all 9 songs in the recording studio in 12 hours.
Wow.
The strings, the horns, and some of the percussions were a different day in the studio and overdubbed.
Did you enjoy the process of being in the studio and doing all of that?
I love it. I was scared, you know, because I was working with, I mean, these musicians
I mean, these
are
are
the best.
Grammy winning who worked with,
They Gaga
a
doesn't know
little
what
woman like Lady Gaga and a little guy like Tony Bennett.
yeah, and she tours all over with them. I mean, that's the
Wow.
pictures of my guys with Gaga are fabulous. Um, so to be in the studio with that level of talent, and you know, whether you're good or not, there's a part of you that never thinks you're that good. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and the most brilliant musicians hit sour notes or miss something or whatever, but it makes you feel like I better not hit a sour note or I better not, you know. And it was really sweet. Daniel Foose came up to me after and he was like, man, you have perfect pitch. Like there wasn't a time we stopped and started that you lost your note. And I was like, really, Daddy? Say it again. You know,
Yeah.
and so that kind of encouragement, and believe
Yeah,
me,
my God, I couldn't imagine going, let alone it was your lyrics and music, all of that. And
and the other thing that was great, Daniel also said to me, he said, I love this music and I really love this song. Again, were you influenced by Burt Bacharach? And I said, that was a tip of the hat to Burt Bacharach, that song, because I was obsessed with Burt Bacharach. He was my favorite songwriter. I will tell you a story. I was in a restaurant in LA once and I was waiting to go into the ladies' room and the woman in the ladies' room was taking forever and I was doing my, I was like, come on, lady. And she opens the door and it was Carol Bear Sager, whatever her name, and Burt Bacharach's wife.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, go back in, do whatever you have to do. I was like, and so I went over and I said hi to Burt and whatever. And that was like a crowning moment, but I'm like, I'm really sorry I made your wife get out of the bathroom. So that felt really good that what I had intended came through.
Who are those people for you today? Burt was, back then who you really loved his lyrics. Is there somebody in 2024
whose writing I love?
Yeah.
I got to tell you something. I love Billie Eilish. And Phineas. And isn't it funny? Because Maggie was on.
I mean, crazy. Did you know her?
Oh, yeah. And she was and remains, I understand, one of the nicest people.
I would love to get both of them because their father was on Guiding Light.
Yeah. And humility in spades, just so sweet and so present and so lovely. But I love the way they write. And by the way, easy transition into jazz, the way they write. Phineas has great jazz influences in the way he writes.
Well, and they're like just perfection of their, how they work together, because that's what they have created together is astonishing.
They're so talented, it's annoying. Like, really?
Yeah.
And her voice is just dreamy to me. So I think, listen, there's a lot of people to love in the music world. Less today than the way I love music. You know what I mean? Like, I although she has a gorgeous voice, I'm not one to listen to Ariana Grande or, I don't. That's not. And listen, I know that there's great talent. It's not my kind of music. I am the quintessential singer-songwriter. I love jazz. I love indie music. Sometimes I listen to sort of rap with my son, which I think they're like, I love Still Woozy. Isn't that a great name? Like if I could come back, I want my name to be Still Woozy.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we talked about this when we had lunch. I mean, will you do a show live?
There are days I wake up and I'm like, I'm doing a show. And then there are days I wake up and I'm like, you can't do a show. You can't even touch your toes. Like, are you kidding? I'm going to be 62 this year. And I'm like, are you kidding? Yeah, 62 this year. I'm like, oh my God, I walked 3 miles. I need a nap. Like, how am I? No. My friend Porter Carroll, who's a wonderful musician, he tours with Hall & Oates, now with Daryl, now that the Hall & Oates are now a bit separate.
They are no longer, correct.
But he called me after he heard the CD, and he said to me, well, I have some good news and I have some bad news. And I was like, what? He said, good news. I love this. Like, it is fantastic, etc. Bad news is you're going to have to do the Carlisle. And I was like,
that would be amazing. My God.
It's funny, when they had approached me many years ago when I was in my 20s, those record companies, and they talked to me about a pop career. And I said to them, I really don't have the disposition to like rehearse every day and to like actually do a tour. Can I just make like a record and have a hit and just stay home? Is that cool? And they were just, no, that doesn't work that way. No, okay, well, probably not for me. So like if I could do a night or two, maybe I would do it.
Totally.
I told you, did I tell you I got pulled up on the stage at the Amman in New York?
No. What is Amman?
Amman is Amaniera, that exclusive set of resorts around the world. They opened up the Amman in New York, and it's the most exclusive jazz club there. Anyway, Sarah Tip was performing, and she pulled me up on stage, and I sang Smile with her. And that was really exciting. That was really fun. Thank God I dressed for it. So,
Is that recorded?
No. It was live and spontaneous. But who knows? Who knows? I haven't given up the idea just yet.
Well, and it sounds like you have enough songs to do a second album.
Yeah, and certainly there are enough songs I want to cover. Like I would do more jazz.
Well, what's your top song right now that if you could do it tomorrow, you would?
Maybe the top few would be like Taking a Chance on Love, Bill, and along came Bill. Yeah. Right? I love that song.
I don't know whose version I know. But that sounds so familiar. Would you do a Karen Carpenter at all?
Oh. Rainy Days and Mondays.
That's exactly what was just in my head. Totally. I don't know why.
That voice. I remember one of the most traumatizing things, obviously I'm saying that jokingly, but was when my sister was teasing me and I threw my hairbrush at her and it hit my Karen Carpenter album and cracked it down the middle. And I cried like a little bee. Like I was just like, I can't believe you made me break my album. I was obsessed with Karen Carpenter. Her voice, like, I didn't like Ticket to Ride. I didn't think they should have covered the Beatles. But day in and day out, she was in my ear. Yeah. So I would probably do either like Rainy Days and Mondays, or I'd say Goodbye to Love. I'll say goodbye to love. There are no tomorrows. You know that song?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
you're gonna make me, when I'm done, I'm gonna be putting Karen on. I haven't listened to her in years.
Watch the documentary on her, by the way.
Where?
It's on Netflix. It's beautiful. And it's so heartbreaking. They have tapes of her now that were released. And it's just heartbreaking. But is it
a new documentary?
Yeah, it's just out the past couple months.
Oh, wow.
And I watched it and it just brought me to tears. And that was the song that used to bring her to tears on stage.
Interesting. Oh, wow. Yeah. I would love to. I mean, because I don't know a lot about her.
Oh,
I was
my
young.
God.
I was, when she passed.
Are you that much younger than me?
No, I'm going to be 58 in October. So
Okay, so I was just
yeah.
like over the.
Yeah, you were like a teenager or more when she was in her height, right?
Yes. And, I had a love affair with those kinds of voices. I loved her. I loved, um, oh my God. I even loved Captain and Tennille.
Oh my God, me too.
Pratt.
Olivia Newton-John.
Olivia Newton-John I liked, but I was more Anne Murray, the deeper, richer voices. I loved Rosemary Clooney. I loved Doris Day. Those pure, crystal clear voices. That's what I loved.
My
Obsessed.
God, I mean, you don't get more crystal than Karen.
No, and effortless. That's the thing. I remember years ago when I did that production of Here I Am, the Burt Bacharach song, and Shaka Khan had heard it. And Shaka wanted to meet me, and I met with Shaka in her apartment, and she goes, "I have a secret. I want to show you something." And she opens up this like really funky, like buffet chest type thing. And she's got all these basement tapes of Karen Carpenter. She's like, she's my idol.
Wow. They're doing a musical on Shaka.
She's amazing. I mean, what a voice. What complete antithesis of what Karen Carpenter's was. But,
totally.
Yeah. So that I would do possibly some of the Carpenter songs. I also love, so many things that Ella Fitzgerald did,
I love that idea of a covers album too. Some great things to play with.
You know what I think would be amazing? Listen, I would have to work very diligently on it, but I always wanted to hear Karen do her songs with just guitar. Just pared down, So an acoustic album could be really fun. That could be fun. Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't have the voice, but I will just say, like, I grew up on Madonna and love Madonna, but like in this tour that she did acoustic Express Yourself. And I think she should be doing a whole album of her music that way because it was spectacular. Like everyone.
Yeah, my ex-boyfriend wrote Like a Virgin. So, I'd seen her a few times in concert, and I know what you mean. Like, I think the more she has to use her voice boldly, it's harder. It's a harder voice to listen to because she doesn't have a big voice. Either does Billie Eilish. That's why Billie is such a genius in the way she uses her voice, and her voice is pretty flawless. She doesn't sound like Karen, but she's a story in a way vocally like Karen, that just like this effortless, this tone. It's just the tone. You can't learn tone. Period. You can't learn tone.
Well, tomorrow's the big day. You should celebrate. Are you doing anything? Or are you gonna?
Well, we're gonna go to dinner.
Nice.
I think we celebrated.
Who was the first person you played the full album in your family for? Was it Bert? Was it Gideon?
It was Bert.
Was what? Do you remember his? Because I'm sure he must have.
He cries about everything, so he cried. He was like, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of you." This is Bert. This is my Bert. That's Bertie Bert.
Loved him. Loved meeting him.
Yeah, he's the sweetest.
Last summer, you were here, Unfinished Business. It's been out a year. What has the reaction been like?
The reaction has been great. And I do want to say something. Had I not finished my business, I could not have made this record, right? There were so many things that happened to me through my life that had I not kept myself clear enough to be able to write the songs and see the potential in the songs, like this is why Unfinished Business needs to be put to rest so that you can do anything that is living in your experience of being alive that wants to be manifest, right? The book has had such a beautiful response. The book has done great. People have reached out. and just loved what the work has done for them. And I'm really proud of the impact it's had on people and how many lives it's impacted as far as moving towards change. And I've gotten some incredible messages from people whose, children got out of depressions and self-harm, and, people that decided to move towards dreams, towards relationships, built courage, and really were pretty detailed about the impact they experienced from doing the work in the book. Doing the work in the book, by the way. I think I told you this. A friend of mine called me just like, if I just read the book, but I don't do the work, will it still work? I'm like, no, you have to do the work.
I know that. Interesting, about doing the work. And it was interesting this morning on Morning Joe, they had the Surgeon General who has put out a warning about parents who are really, dealing with a lot of stress in raising children today. Like there's a mental health crisis weighing on parents in our world today.
The mental health crisis is so bad. I have a number of clients in my practice that are in the mental health field, and they are overwhelmed. They are inundated. There's not even enough practitioners to deal with these youths. And that's another thing that's interesting, is this book has even impacted the parents to be able to help their children. I mean, you can use this book even with your children. So, it's the world has changed more in the past 10 years than it has in the past 200.
Probably.
So, right there is a loss. The systems we had in play that made sense of the chaos are no longer in play. It's just it's a different rule book, and the kids don't know what to do with it, because I don't think the parents do either.
Well, I think that's where the warning. I think parents don't know how to. Also, I think of. My parents weren't as busy as parents are today, because, they didn't put me into 400 different things. Like, kids are put into to a zillion things, which I think it's great to have them try things, but I mean, there should be a limit as well. Like, let the kid have some downtime. Let the kid spend time with your family. Do you have World Turns fans who have experienced the book as well?
Yes. Oh yeah. And I love it. They like DM me, and even with questions,
That's awesome.
I don't know what that means. Oh, this is what you do. Let me know if if it's working or whatever. And so much love and support from the community. It was so funny. I was sitting, my website's been live with the album CDs.
Yeah.
The physical copies and the signed copies. So I was sitting there the other night, and
there it is. Right. That's it.
Orders came in, and I said to her, "Oh my God, people are buying the record." And he goes, "Really?" So I texted my web guy, and I go, "People are buying the record." He said, "I saw that. Congratulations." I go, "Well, what do I do now?" And he goes, "Ship them." Because I have to ship the signed ones.
That's funny.
Them, right?
Yeah.
So that was actually really funny. And then I shared with you, I found out this morning that
yes,
2 of the songs are being submitted for Grammy consideration.
Which ones?
Smile and Love Me.
Wow.
So I don't know if it will be considered, but the fact that it was even submitted for Grammy consideration is
pretty
amazing.
Now, does that mean you had to add it? I don't know if you're still part of the acting union, but you had to add another union for recording industry. Do you have to be part of that?
No, just the submitters do.
Submitters do. Gotcha.
Yeah,
so the
producers, musicians, whoever submits. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, because I can't imagine. I mean, everything costs money.
And that really felt good. That felt really good. Like, whether or not I end up on the ballot,
the people you had work on your album feel there's great work. Yes. Absolutely. You should. I mean, seriously, I was blown away, and I can't wait for people to hear. I do want to ask you, because a fan had sent me this clip and wanted to know what you remember, if you remember.
Talk to Paul and tell him how much I love him.
And I'm warning, this is a little
Change his
violent.
mind
for
about
people
me,
who are watching.
please.
Never. He has his own life now. We'll never get him back. He hates you.
Whore, you seduced my You want more? You seduced my son, it's all here. Every filthy detail. You ready to down my son? You thought you could get back to me on doing that, Emily! Emily! Stop! Get up! Paul! Stop! Paul! Get with me! Just get the hell out of here! Why don't you stop? Paul, I'm your father. No! Get the hell away from your damn murderer! You...
Crazy. Wow.
Oh, it's work, honey.
Oh, that bed, lady.
The round bed.
That bed is something else. Is that where you were with Brock too on that bed? I feel like
I was probably with Oakdale on that bed. I mean, I think I was on that bed with Paul and Brock and Holden and had to be Craig. I mean, who else? Antonio.
Did you see I posted that picture of John, Martha, and you this week for his birthday?
So fabulous. Well, so you asked what I remembered about that.
Yeah,
well,
Armando.
I remember being in wet, like in the shower scene. I was in like a corset and like under like pantyhose things, and that was pretty gnarly. I remember that. I also remember it was such an emotional day. Like there was so much emoting. I remember thinking it was so cool learning the fight scene. And when he picks me up, to choke me, and it was so real looking. But what that was he was holding me, but I was supporting me to keep the weight off my neck. You'll notice my hands are so, and then I just remember getting so lost in it. And then the scene after, I think a police officer or someone comes in, and it was like all this emotion or whatever. And he kept forgetting his line. And we had to keep doing the scene over and over.
Oh, God.
I was ready to go bananas. But that was a great storyline.
Were you hurt?
Was I what?
Hurt doing that?
No. I was tired and my throat was tired. It's a lot to scream, even when you scream properly. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his get up alone.
And I love all. Yeah.
And Andy looks 12.
He still looks 12.
I know,
but it's like, was that a choice or a no? Like, I forget who directed that? It might have been Paul. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was Jill. But it was just what a crew we were. We were just such a good team together for that whole storyline. And that was the second time. Remember the first time I shot James?
Yeah.
And now this time, and he still didn't die.
Oh my God. He 9 lives that man had.
Thank you, whoever submitted that. That was a blast.
James Stenbeck and Roger Thorpe on Guiding Light had like 100 lives.
Right, exactly. And by the way, that is my natural hair color.
I mean, those were the days. You didn't work with Steven Weber, right?
I didn't work with him.
Was he there? Did you cross?
I think we crossed over. Yeah. Our storylines never. There were quite a few people that I actually did not work with, nor were they in the rehearsal hall when I was there. Like when in my times, like I was in the morning and they were.
Was
in the
there
afternoon.
anybody? I don't remember if I asked before. Was there anybody you really wanted to have crossed with that you didn't get much time with?
You know, I would have loved to have worked directly with Meg.
Mm.
I loved working with Julianne. I loved, you know, Parker was adorable. Didn't get to work with Marissa. I did get to work with Billy, who's a wonderful actor. I would have loved to have done more with Billy Fichtner.
Oh, Billy, another great, yes.
Yeah, a really wonderful actor. I mean, like we were such a group of thespians on that show. It was just such a great troupe, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Patricia Bruder and David, who played David, your grandfather.
Oh my God, you're going to really ask my brain.
No, I'm looking it up myself. I'm blanking. Was it Don? No.
I will know the name when you say it.
Yes, and I will too. Henderson.
Oh my God,
Forsyth. Henderson.
Yes. Oh my
Forsyth.
God, what a nice man. Yeah.
What do you remember? Patricia?
Oh my God, just the, you know, it's funny though, because so when you go back and you look at the original World Turns, I mean the original, like the black and white, the original.
Yeah.
They were like the young Eileen Fulton, like Marie, they were such good actors. Patricia, like such good actors. And then you like flash forward to then when we were on and they had like 3 lines.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, gosh,
I mean, they really kept the show number one. The show was number one for like a ridiculous amount of years with all of them leading it.
Yeah. And we were number one. Thank God. When I was on the show, I was very proud of that. But it, you know, they age them out. And I just thought that they had so much talent and so much more to offer. But it's like that, you know, just throw them a bone or something. But
I think that's where the mistake
100%, of
in
course,
all of daytime, because, you know, they're not on the air anymore. And, you know, I was a young person who loved Bob and Kim and loved everybody who was part of Bob and Kim's world. So Franny and Andy, like it's, you know, I was looking up to the parents for me.
Yeah. And I think I said this to you, like as a child, I never watched the show and said, oh, I want to be an actress. I watched the show and I said, I want to live in Oakdale.
Right.
And there's a reason. I wanted them to be my parents. I wanted those grandparents. I don't mean a disrespect to my mom and dad. I loved my mom and dad. It was like, oh my God, they had the perfect house and the perfect family and and you wanted to be a part of that. And it was such suspended disbelief. You know, my mother used to say things like, I'm calling them and I'm going to tell them that he's hiding in the closet. You know, like, Mom, I think they know. I think the producers know. I think the cameramen know.
That's hysterical. Yeah, it's interesting. I you know, I also think because there were so many cooks in the kitchen, you know, these shows were on for so long that, you know, it didn't stay with Erna Phillips. Like if Erna had been doing it all, you know, like if you have one showrunner that takes a show from beginning to end, it sometimes can really stay on the right track. And sadly, it can't happen in daytime because they're just on too long. But I think that hurt the genre to some degree,
but
because
keeping that level of quality, right? If whoever took over and then Douglas and whomever, that quality of writing, but isn't that happening all over though? You know, how long do you spend on streaming services going, there's nothing to watch?
Totally.
Because content has replaced quality. Like we just want content. But I won't watch anything that's not well written and well produced and well acted. And I'll tell you, I miss the genre of daytime. I think it's a missing link right now. You know, for me, reality has not taken that spot. Not at
No.
all.
Well, I don't know if you know. I mean, there is a new soap coming to CBS, which is beyond shocking in January, called The Gates.
Oh, yeah. I read about that.
Yeah.
That's great, though.
I mean, the first time since all the shows that, World Turns, Guiding Light, One Life, All My Children departed, that a brand new show. It's been decades.
I love it. And I'd love to see some on this coast.
Yeah. I think that it's a shame just for actors, young actors who, you think of all the actors that came through Oakdale.
Well, the thing was the system in place, right? Like you could pay your bills by being on daytime and do theater. Right? Larry did theater, Liz did theater. They all Lindsay did they all did Broadway while they were on World Turns. And that was really the system that worked so beautifully for actors in New York. Was, I had gotten of Mice and Men, and I didn't have the disposition. Like I was exhausted by the end of those days. I had a lot of material. So like to go from that to off Broadway
That's a lot of work.
Really challenging for me. So I didn't do it. It's a small regret of mine, but that was really the formula.
Yeah.
Was you could have a great life and pay your bills, and then you could do theater. And between theater runs, you could, still audition and be on daytime. And they were cooperative. Daytime was cooperative. They would put whoever was doing a show, they'd put the work and design it around their matinees and things like that. It was great. So it's like almost a bigger loss for this coast.
I agree. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's
well,
sad.
My dear, you enjoy tomorrow. I know that some of the people watching said they purchased the album. So send Melanie a message when you listen. Let her know what you think. And congratulations.
Thank you. Anybody who's watching, Alan, thank you always for your love and support of all that I do and all that everybody does. You are an angel and a wonderful friend and a generous soul. You are one of a kind. Thank you. And thanks everybody for spending the time listening and let me know what you think. If you get the album, let me know what you think. And I just feel very blessed. So thank you.
Enjoy the love.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Bye, my dear. Back at you. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you to Melanie Smith for spending this time with us and putting this beautiful new jazz album, The Broken and the Breaker, out. iTunes, Amazon, and Melanie's website, workwithmelaniesmith.com. Join us on Thursday, September 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern when Steven Weber, Kevin from As the World Turns will be here, and 7 p.m. on September 5th, I will chat with Emmy-winning producer Jody Small about her documentary, The Storm and the Boats. The powerful film captures diverse stories from New Jersey residents during the pandemic. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And remember, if you'd like to stream audio versions, just search The Locher Room on your favorite podcast app. Have a great weekend, everybody. And as always, stay safe, please.